Chris McClean has always sounded like this.
Okay, let's get this bloodbath started.
Now he sounds like this.
And you should always be this far away from me.
Yep, for the first time ever, Chris McClean is no longer being voiced by Christian Potenza, and he's now being voiced by Terry McGurran, who is best known for being the voice of Jonesy in 16 and Don in Redonkulous Race. Now, Chris McClean having a new voice is definitely super weird, and it takes a lot of getting used to when watching the reboot, but I don't think it's that bad. But while I was watching the reboot, I was thinking to myself, well, since Chris McClean's original voice actor is no longer there, what if Chris McClean just wasn't there at all? What if Total Drama just had a new host altogether? And especially if this host did come from the Total Drama universe, but just a different character in place of him. And so I'm going to be looking at a bunch of different alternative options for Chris McClean and see if they really do fit the mold for a Total Drama host or not. Now, Chef Hatchet is an obvious one just because he's basically already the co-host of Total Drama, and he has plenty of experience with hosting on his own, most notably in one of the best episodes of all time, Basics Training. Now, Chef is a lot like Chris in that he takes pleasure in the contestants' pain and misfortunes just like him, but Chef is also very different in just his demeanor. He's very strict and very disciplined, obviously coming from his background, but another big difference with Chef is that, well, he kind of likes to, let's say, cheat a little bit here and there. He's made deals in the past with people like DJ and Blaney trying to get a piece of the prize money. And listen, us reality TV fans need to know that rigging does take place on reality TV. It is a thing that happens, and so, I mean, if anything, Chef is just true representation of that taking place in reality TV. Now, I really found it interesting seeing Chef's kind of new persona, if you will, in the new reboot, seeing him just be a lot more compassionate and, I don't know, just kind of nice, which was really weird, but I also feel like it's some good character development, especially because that does take place like 15 years later. And I think it'd be really cool to see Chef Hatchet basically be a singles host, just because of the fact that there is still so much to explore with this character. He is such a fun character, and I don't know, I just feel like in the last 3 seasons of Total Drama, he really just didn't do anything and was mostly just pushed to the background. And so I feel like the reboot was great to have Chef return to the forefront a little bit and just do a lot more, and so I'm hopeful that in the second season of the reboot, Chef can be able to do a lot more, and that's what I'm most hopeful for. So in general, yes, Chef Hatchet would be a great host for Total Drama instead of Chris McClean. Now, Don was the host of Total Drama Redonkulous Race, and I think the most interesting thing about this is that he is literally voiced by Terry McGurran, as I said earlier, who now voices Chris McClean in the Total Drama reboot, and I feel like this is an interesting connection between the actual show and the spin-off Redonkulous Race. And I feel like Don crossing over from Redonkulous Race into Total Drama and fully connecting the two would be super cool for the show in general. Now obviously, Don is a bit different from Chris and Chef in that he's just very normal, he's very neutral. He's basically like your typical reality TV or game show host, really. And I mean, it does make sense because he's basically based off of Phil Kogan, the actual host of The Amazing Race. But Don does have his tendencies to get really annoyed with the cast and give them punishments and whatnot, so it's not like he's just completely nice and normal all the time. He does have a side that you don't want to cross. But I do think it'd be really interesting to see Don on the actual show instead of just the spin-off, and maybe he could have a co-host like maybe Chef, you know? The interactions between Don and Chef could actually be really funny, or just Don and someone else, who knows. But I think it'd be really interesting to kind of push Don out of his comfort zone and into Total Drama where there's just a lot more wacky and crazy stuff going on than Redonkulous Race, and so it'd be interesting to see what else he can do besides just the little bits of annoyance and stuff that he did have in Redonkulous Race. So I'm going to say that yes, Don would also make a good host for Total Drama in place of Chris McClean. Now this one is interesting because Blaney does have hosting experience, but just not in the same way as Don or Chef or even Chris. She was the host of the Celebrity Manhunt special and of the Total Drama World Tour Aftermath show, so therefore she does have experience with hosting, just not really in the same way as any of the other previous ones in this video so far, but nonetheless, hosting experience is hosting experience, so she could definitely make the transition. And as seen in her short time on Total Drama World Tour, she had no issue wheeling and dealing with people like Chef Hatchet to try to get her a win, so she clearly understands the business of reality TV. Not to mention that she was also really good on the Aftermath with the type of questions she would ask, as well as the type of things that she would try to get contestants to unveil. And of course, she's super into all the gossip and kind of stuff like that, as seen in the Celebrity Manhunt special, so she knows what makes good TV, she knows what's going to get good ratings, and she knows what people want to see. So if anything, I think that Blanley would be a perfect fit for a show like Total Drama. Oh, and let's not forget this.
Oh, you want to hear something really fun? They wanted me to host the show. You only got the job because I said no and...
Now on to Josh, the other host of the Celebrity Manhunt special along with Blanley. Now, he and Blanley do have a lot of similar qualities, but I'm not exactly sure if he's Total Drama host material. Now of course, Josh, a lot like Blanley, loves drama, especially cat fights, knows what gets good ratings, and in general just knows show business, but I'm not exactly sure if he's fit to be a Total Drama host. Now Josh does appear in Total Drama Rama as a news reporter, and I feel like that's probably where he shines best. As a news reporter or like just a TV presenter in general, but as just a host of a reality show or a competition show, I don't think he can really transition into that as well as I think Blanley could. So I'm gonna have to say that Josh would not make a good Total Drama host in place of Chris McClean. Now I'm moving on to the Total Drama Aftermath show for Action and World Tour, one of the hosts of that being Bridget. I'm going to get into Jeff later, or basically right after this, but for Bridget, I'm not really sure about her either, to be honest. Now, there are definitely times where Bridget will go along with Jeff's antics, but most of the time she is berating him for the stuff that he tries pulling on the Aftermath show.
You sound like a really great friend and teammate.
What is with him?
I think fame has gone to his perfectly coiffed head.
I am still here, you know.
And that obviously makes her a great person. She is a very nice person, but I think she's just a bit too nice to really be a Total Drama host. And I mean, that makes her a lot better than most other people, but yeah, I think in general she's just too nice. And, you know, especially for being a Total Drama host, as we've seen with some examples like Chris and Chef, you have to be pretty crazy, and you have to be a little bit psycho and a little bit of a menace. And so I don't really think Bridget fits any of that, but if anything, Bridget should be proud that she's not even going to be considered for it really, because she's just a great person and should not be a Total Drama host. So yeah, in general, no, Bridget would not be a good Total Drama host in place of Chris McClean. Now, the complete opposite of Bridget, this guy right here, Jeff, he is a menace. I remember when I was a kid watching Total Drama Action for the very first time, and I hated this dude in Total Drama Action. I thought he was the biggest jerk ever. And now I'm old enough to realize that him being a jerk is actually pretty great. It was pretty funny. This dude would do anything, would say anything. I'm not gonna lie, at this point in the series, in Total Drama Action, Chris wasn't even this crazy, I don't think. Like, Jeff has reached some insane levels of just, I don't even know. But I definitely think that from what Jeff showed in the Aftermath show, in Action and World Tour, it is safe to say that yeah, Jeff would definitely be able to host Total Drama. And I think that would actually be pretty sick, seeing a former Total Drama contestant then host Total Drama. And I think Jeff would honestly be perfect for that. Even when he's not being a total menace, like his actual personality is really chill and laid back and just fun. And I feel like that kind of vibe was common with a lot of like the early hosts of the challenge. So I've basically already answered it, but yes, Jeff would definitely be a perfect choice to replace Chris as the host of Total Drama. Now, speaking of Total Drama Action, I'm going to talk about Owen. Now, this definitely seems very random compared to everyone else that I've talked about so far because of their reasonings for why they're considered, but in Total Drama Action, Owen was brought back as a saboteur for production. So I figured, well, if he was involved in production, I might as well include him in the conversation as a potential host, especially since they're in cahoots anyways, but I mean, let's just cut to the chase. Like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Owen would definitely not be a good Total Drama host. Even though there were moments in that brief run as a saboteur, Owen was enjoying it, but he quickly regretted it, and so I just feel like, no, like, he suffers from the same thing as Bridget. He's just too nice, and to give the final answer, no. Owen would not be a good Total Drama host in place of Chris.
Topher here. A lot of people have told me I look like a young Chris McClean. In fact, my nickname is Chris 2.0.
The last person that I'm going to talk about is Topher. Literally, who is Chris 2.0. I mean, that is literally the entire point of his character, is just to be Chris McClean, except just younger and better. And I mean, literally, the whole thing he was trying to do on Pagatu Island was just replace Chris McClean. And so, because of his sheer determination to do this, despite the fact that it's highly unrealistic, I feel like he'd have to be a good host. I mean, there's no way that you can be that determined and then just be total crap at the job. Like, he'd have to be good. And I feel like there's definitely qualities to him that would make for a good host, but I also feel like he might just be a bit too self-absorbed. Now, people like Chris McClean and even Jeff, I would say, are definitely a bit self-absorbed and have a bit of an ego, but I feel like Topher's ego is just so huge that I'm not sure if he'd actually be able to focus on the fact that he'd be hosting a reality show. But because he's a huge admirer of Chris McClean, or at least he claims to be, I think he'd understand what it takes to be a reality TV host, so if anything, I'm just going to be trusting Topher's judgment and say that, yeah, I think he would be a good replacement for a host of Total Drama, but with caution. So after looking at 8 different candidates for who could be a potential replacement for Chris McClean, I've come to see that there are 5 people who would be a good replacement and 3 people who wouldn't be a good replacement. That's a pretty good ratio. Now, Chris McClean is always going to be one of the big faces of Total Drama, and it would just be weird to imagine him not being there in Total Drama, but the change of his voice did get me thinking about how that would look. And obviously, Chris McClean is super popular. I mean, when people first found out about the voice change, that went viral. So, imagining Total Drama without Chris McClean is just almost impossible, really, but still an interesting thought to think about. And even in my review video, which you should check out, I stated that after watching the whole season, I actually warmed up to Chris's voice and I didn't find it that bad at all, but still is definitely a weird change to get used to nonetheless. So anyways, if you guys have anybody that you think would be a good host, comment that down below, and also comment down below what other types of videos you'd like to see from me. Like the video, subscribe, thank you for watching, peace out.